the way that the medical system is set up here in the United States is it's very reactionary, and you only get to look at snippets of information. Your body, the way that God designed it, it knows how to fight cancer, and the only way to do that is to get concrete information instead of just basing things off books that have been published for solutions that have worked for somebody else. It's not specific to the person. So genetic predispositions mean that yes, there's some coding that happens to be present in that person's DNA, but what turns the light switch on is our everyday living. Stress and toxins and inflammation and quality of sleep and exercise. Our grandparents' generation that lived in the 20s and went through the Great Depression, they were all like mini homesteaders. People were growing their own food. There wasn't all of this commercialized farming and all of these hybridized type crops and then add in all the pesticides. They were eating real food from soil that was definitely healthier. There's other factors, but the food is a critical piece of that.
Feeling so free, I've got a new chance. Feeling so free, I've got a new test. What's holding you down, you've got to let it go. Let it go. Say a prayer, release it, let it flow.
Hi, Dr. Kelly.
Hi.
Hi, gals. How's it going?
Thank you so much for joining us and being patient to this start.
Absolutely.
For those who may not have known, this has been like a 15-minute entrance.
Yes. Gotta love technology.
But we're here. This call. Yes, God is great. We are here. Everything is running, and we are praying that you guys completely enjoy this episode and take away something new from it.
Yes.
So Dr. Kelly is a chiropractic, clinical nutrition expert dedicated to transforming lives through personalized, science-based nutrition care. With over 2 decades of experience, Dr. Shockley focuses on uncovering the root cause of health issues through comprehensive lab testing, providing solutions that go beyond traditional approaches. And her practice serves patients across the United States, making top-tier nutritional care accessible no matter where you live.
Were we your first international patients?
Well,
Sent to you.
I would say, actually, probably yes. I have had a couple of Canadians. The challenge is being able to do the testing that we do outside of the United States. It's a complicated thing. So the fact that you guys are able to kind of come back and forth between the actual physical US is helpful. So yes, yes and yes.
Well, we're happy to be the first.
I'm very grateful for the opportunity, that's for sure.
Okay, so I guess our first question is this. If someone has just received a scary diagnosis, what's the first thing they should do to move from fear to empowerment?
I love that question. Super awesome. So the way that I operate is out of testing. And to me, when there's a scary diagnosis, part of the challenge is the way that the medical system is set up here in the United States is it's very reactionary. And you only get to look at snippets of information. To me, testing is what creates the empowerment because let's just say a scary diagnosis was cancer, the dreaded C word. Your body, the way that God designed it, it knows how to fight cancer. We're all fighting cancer every single day. When that diagnosis comes, we have to understand what went wrong that basically distracted the body away from doing something that God designed it to do. And the only way to do that is to be able to look at you as a whole and get concrete information, objective information, instead of just basing things off of how we feel or books that have, been published for solutions that have worked for somebody else. While all of that is helpful, it's not specific to the person. So to me, to be able to go through, actually I just got off of the video here with a gentleman who is diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Wow. They haven't ran any cancer markers on him. And they just look at little snapshots where we went through and did our full testing. I don't treat cancer. I don't diagnose cancer. But we're looking to have all of the objective information of what went wrong in his body that allowed this to go unchecked. And to me, that is what can give us empowerment, because if you are not testing, you're guessing. If you can test and you can see what's wrong across the board, then you can start creating a plan that is specific to the individual that can then start moving them in the right direction. And being able to test also gives you an objective measure to come back to. So we retest to actually see what's happening at the cellular level. Is the body responding in the way that we would expect it to? Or is there something that isn't moving in the direction we want it to? And how do we adjust what plan we put into place to try to get the result that we're after?
So yes, Dr. Kelly, as you mentioned, one of your powerful phrases, if not your powerful phrase, it's if you're not testing, you're guessing. And you kind of explained why it's so crucial and what people should be doing when they hear these different diagnoses. But what is it that people should be testing for?
Oh, very good question. You gals, you're awesome. So, gosh, my journey started when I was a kid. When I was a super sick kid, passed all throughout medical. Nobody could tell us why I was sick. And they just kept on prescribing different medications, and I only got worse. And the last doctor that we saw was an internist. So I saw a ton of different specialists, and he's like, yeah, not really sure. We're going to change your meds. When you come back from Christmas break, if you're not any better, then you need to do IV meds. And if that doesn't do it, you need to do surgery. And all along the while, like, there's got to be some other way. My parents, more so at that point, because I was 14, was like, there has to be some other solution. And thankfully, it was in that timing that my grandparents were seeing a chiropractor. And he wasn't just your neck and back chiropractor. He was helping my grandfather with other like digestive issues. So he heard about my situation. He's like, bring her in. We just happened to be going there for Christmas that year. And when I met with Dr. John, it was the very first time I understood the difference between finding the root cause of a problem versus just symptom managing. And that was kind of the beginning of my whole journey. Less than a year of being under his care, I was like a totally brand new human being and knew I was going to become a chiropractor. So he is the one who taught me about cause versus symptom. But then I went through chiropractic school, and I get out of chiropractic school and I'm like, I still don't have an objective way to identify really what is the cause of a problem, even with all of the information and the studies that we've done. So thankfully, another amazing chiropractor came across my paths, partly because of Dr. John, who taught me to look at testing in a very different way than the rest of what medical does. And it was from him where I had more appreciation of exactly how the body kind of falls apart. And, you know, the body gets into this situation if the demand is not being satisfied, you know, so nutrient demand, our bodies need so many nutrients every day in order for things to function. And if it's not being fed the right nutrients, it goes into what I call the Ponzi scheme of health, where it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. So when you go back and you look at what can your body break down, if it has to self-sacrifice, what can it break down and still live, even though it may not be how we want it to be, in order to preserve life? So this is where the testing comes in. What we test for is what we consider the foundation of your health. So for example, if the body was in this situation where it had to rob Peter to pay Paul, what is more important for your survival? Your hair, skin, and nails, or say your liver? The liver totally is, right?
Naturally.
So your body's going to break down the hair, skin, and nails. Like, people walk around bald all of the time and they are still living. They may not enjoy the fact that they don't have hair, but they're still living.
Right.
Same thing with the musculoskeletal system. How many people do you know that are walking around with aches and pains or arthritis? And it's like, we've been conditioned to believe that's just part of getting older.
So true.
They're not comfortable, but they're still living. And then the one that throws everybody for a loop are hormones. Your body can have all kinds of different hormonal imbalances, which makes us miserable. But hormone problems are not where the actual cause is. Your body is sacrificing those hormones to reallocate the nutrients from them to your vital organs. So it comes down to the vital organs, and then the rest of the organs follow suit after that. So for me, to know where the cause of a problem is, we have to look at the foundation of your health, which are all the organ systems. So when we test, we're always looking at the function of the kidneys and the liver and the digestive system and the heart and the pancreas, and so all your organs. And then in today's world, there are two common offenders that are linked with every health issue that there is. One is inflammation, the other are toxins. So regardless of the diagnosis, this is where I start with people. There might be some additional panels that we add in or some additional markers that might pertain more to a person's situation. Just again, to have an objective benchmark, think of it that way. So the gentleman with pancreatic cancer, we ran cancer markers on him. I need a benchmark to know where is he right now so that when we retest in a few weeks, we can see, how, like, has he improved? Even though we're not directly treating the cancer, we're treating the foundation and dealing with the offenders, right?
Right.
So does that make sense?
No, that definitely makes sense. And when you said inflammation and toxins are the two main offenders, inflammation can also be caused by toxins, right? And would you say there's a few main offenders when it comes to inflammation itself?
Yeah, that's a really good point. What's been fascinating is, so I run toxin markers on every patient I work with, and I run inflammatory markers with every patient I work with as well. I have a number of patients whose inflammatory markers are in the optimal range, but I have yet to find somebody who doesn't have a toxic burden issue. Every single person I've tested has toxins that have built up inside of the system because the body hasn't been able to keep up with what we are being exposed to, partly because that pathway needs to have the right nutrients in order for it to operate. Now, you could look for inflammation within different systems and find inflammation. They do go hand in hand. But it's just been interesting to see how toxins are the much bigger elephant in the room than the inflammation itself. But toxins can provoke inflammation. Our diet is one of the best ways to provoke inflammation or defend against it. You know, sugar, I call it the white devil because it's awful. It's highly addictive. It's more addictive than cocaine. It's the most addictive substance known to man, and it is the best provoker of inflammation. So if we know that creating an environment where there is no inflammation is the goal, we've got to choose wisely what we're putting into our mouths so that we're not putting like fuel on a fire. That's what sugar does. So those are two big provokers of inflammation.
So would you say that sugar is the first thing people should remove from their diets where it concerns inflammation?
Refined sugar, because there's a big, conversation between refined sugar and natural sugar. Is the sugar in fruit the same as a tablespoon of sugar?
Or honey and maple syrup, natural sugars, unrefined?
Yep, these are great questions. So if you go back to like our early ancestors, well, not even our early ancestors, if you go back to like the early 1900s, the amount of sugar collectively that people were consuming wasn't even measurable. Compared to now, it's like 150 pounds per year, if not more at this point.
And that's like natural sugar? Well, obviously, it's not like table sugar. It's natural.
Well, yes, in today's world, it's not natural sugar at all. Well, it's man-made, chemically processed junk that they put into everything. So we eat way more of it than what we ever used to. And that is the big key when you start looking at natural versions. So I did baking over the weekend. It's a funny story, but the ingredients that I use are all healthier ingredients. And the sweetener in these cookies that I made that are made with almond flour, a little bit of gluten-free oats, was maple syrup, organic maple syrup, and a little bit of coconut sugar. Those still provoke a response by the body that we would want to keep more at a minimal. So if we need to have sugar, it's better to get it in its natural forms. But I also will say we've been informed to like just eat an abundant amount of fruit. Fruit, if you look at the research behind fructose, which is the main natural sugar that's in fruit, it was one of the sugar replacements that the industry thought was a good idea because it doesn't cause a sugar spike, our blood sugar. So that's where they moved to fructose. However, the reason why there's no spike in blood sugar is because it's processed in the liver. But the liver can only handle so much of that because it's stressful on it. So one of the main provokers right now of non-alcoholic fatty liver disorder, which is like an epidemic in itself, is too much fructose. Now, obviously, man-made version of high fructose corn syrup is worse than fructose straight from fruit. But the whole point is you can still have too much of the natural sugars. So it's a balancing act. I would always opt for natural sugars instead of the man-made junk, but we still want to keep that in moderation. There's research that's been done since the early 70s for human beings, like what eating style is the best to promote overall health and well-being. And it comes down to percentages. So percentages of fats to proteins to carbs. Keeping carbohydrates very low, they say around 20% or less, is ideal. And, fats are somewhere around 50 to 70%, and then proteins, clean proteins, 20 to 30%, sets you up for healthy BMIs, healthy blood pressure, cholesterol levels, inflammatory markers, diabetic markers, like you name it. Majority of the population responds well to those types of ratios. And your carbohydrates are your vegetables and some fruit. Our grains are worse than sugar, actually, when you look at how it creates blood sugar spikes and that within the system too. So sugars are not created equally. Natural is definitely better than the other stuff, but we still want to keep it in moderation in order to not provoke the inflammation or to start going down a path towards diabetes, and everything else that comes with that.
It's so interesting that you say that in regards to the natural sugars, because we definitely use natural sugars now, post everything that we've been through. But I find that if I take in coconut sugar, it does give me a little bump, a little breakout after I would have eaten it. I don't have the same reaction to honey, but definitely to the coconut sugar.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
You definitely have to watch everything and do everything in moderation. Do you have that same issue?
I think I do.
Well, and all of our bodies are totally different.
Different,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, we definitely noticed that. We use each other as I think I've told you this before, science experiment, the constant, and, the relative. Because we're twins, exact same DNA, not the same fingertips, but the same DNA. But we found that there's still so many differences. And I think, too, it's how we've learned to, the habits that we both picked up for ourselves.
Yes.
Whereas there's more of a disparity, because there shouldn't be a disparity.
If we were doing the same exact if our
thing.
habits were the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It was funny. I was listening to just something over the weekend talking about twins and how incredibly different actually twins are from one another. And I think, so you brought it up, genetic coding is going to be very similar. However, it's all the other variables that will play into what manifests, which is a whole other crazy, topic side of medicine that's gaining more traction is the genetic expression.
Epigenetics?
Yeah. So epigenetics is gene expression. So, for example, go back to when they first found the gene that was linked with breast cancer, the BRCA gene. And all of these women went out to get genetic testing for the BRCA gene, and everybody in Hollywood who had positive BRCA genes were having mastectomies just as a preventative measure, which is incredibly invasive. But the frustration about that is it's a genetic predisposition. So think of it as a light switch. If the light switch stays in the off position, whatever that light switch is coded for or that gene is coded for is not being expressed in the body. But if the light switch gets turned on, now it's actually being expressed in the body. You can see the light, right? But what turns the light switch on? And if you find that answer, you also know how to turn the light switch back off. So genetic predispositions mean that, yes, there's some coding that happens to be present in that person's DNA. But what turns the light switch on is our everyday living. It's what are we eating and how are we living, and stress and toxins and inflammation and quality of sleep and exercise. They are all things that we actually have a lot of control over. So it's unfortunate because a lot of women had mastectomies that probably didn't need to if they just lived clean, which you don't even have to be perfect. God has so much grace. None of us are perfect. We're not capable of perfect. We just strive for 80% of doing things that we know we need to be doing in order to be healthy. Then the likelihood of that light switch ever being turned on is really small.
That's a great point. That's something that we've been discussing and learning a lot over the last couple of years. They said genetics load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger.
Yeah,
and that
exactly.
Opened my eyes, because I think everybody's exposed to this. Some things in your genes. If it's in your genes, you can't do anything about it. And then at the same time, you can say, okay, yeah, that's not true. You can change your genes, but at the same time, your genes do dictate to some level issues that you can have with your health, but it doesn't necessarily determine the issues that you have. And that was really cool to feel like you have a little bit more control as opposed to I was just born with this sickness or this disease.
Exactly. It's not a guaranteed outcome. And there's only a few true inherited diseases that are genetic in their coding that you don't have any say over. Everything else is a genetic predisposition, which means you have control over it. They say that it's about 90% of influence for these genetic, quote unquote, issues. It's all environmental. So like you said, the genes load the gun, lifestyle, environment pulls the trigger. So if we just put all of that stacked into our favor, you don't have to worry about it. Somebody who has a genetic predisposition compared to somebody who doesn't for a particular issue, whether it's cancer, Alzheimer's, you name it, they have to live a little bit more cleanly than the other person does. But it doesn't have to be their future outcome if they don't want it to be, really, is what we now know, because bodies are amazing.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely feel like we fall into the have to be a little bit more cleaner
Yeah.
category. I've noticed. I mean, it is what it is.
And I feel like that's almost like a generation thing too, as well. And maybe because of the food that was different. I feel like my mom is a lot more stronger than we are.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No.
It's really true. There was research that was coming out that kids being born today are not going to live as long as their grandparents did, and they may not even live as long as what their parents do. And a lot of it comes back to food. I actually just was having a conversation with a different gentleman today. Him and his wife were having a conversation last night about, our grandparents' generation that lived in the 20s and went through the Great Depression. They were all like mini homesteaders. People were growing their own food. They, there wasn't all of this commercialized, conventional farming and all of these hybridized type crops, and then add in all the pesticides and that. Like, they were eating real food from soil that was definitely healthier than what it is now, and like eating just whole food versus processed and packaged and convenience. So they got a better start, through their developmental years of being fed what the body actually needs in order for it to thrive. So that is a big part of what's changed. I mean, there's other factors, but the food is a critical piece of that.
And it's so funny, back then it wasn't called homesteading, it was just called living life.
Good old life.
Everybody had gardens. It was just normal.
Exactly.
Our great grandmother was born in 1922.
1922.
And she lived until she was 99. And she passed away about 3 years ago.
2021.
My grandparents, I think they were born a little bit earlier than yours. 96, 94, never on medication. My great grandmother up in North Dakota, she was a German lady, lived to be just shy of 100.
And she took pride. Because she was from one of the other islands that aren't as developed as the island that we're on right now.
So we call our island like the city, Nassau, and the outer islands. We call them like the family islands, the less developed ones. We're all islands, but yeah.
Yeah, and she was super proud to be from her island.
Andros, it's one of the main agricultural island in the country. And she would always say, from the soil.
You'd call her name, and then she said she's from the soil.
Yeah.
It's so true. That generation had a lot more pride, in everything that they did. But yeah, if we could go back to that, where people were just growing their own food and you're working locally with other ranchers or farmers, to fill in what you need from animal products or what have you, would be so much better. And just eating food that doesn't come in a package. If it's in a package or a box or, prepackaged stuff, it's contaminated, is what I tell my son. Like, that's contaminated. There's something in there that is foreign or poison that your body does not need to interact with. So just eating real food from the soil is super important.
Yeah, they say, I've heard a lot of people say, shop the perimeter of the grocery store and not in the middle. Fruits, vegetables, meat. If you do cheese raw, I know you tell us, and in small quantities.
Totally agree with you on that. Just avoid the bakery. If you're living in America.
Oh, yeah.
Over in Europe, it's totally different.
Yes. Yes.
The only aisle that I say you can go into a bit is the fats. because, olive oil, avocado oil, those are fine. And you're not going to find those in the perimeter. But otherwise, I say death comes to us from the aisles. It's just slow. But yeah,
Dang.
perimeter, real smooth. I might be a little harsh every now and again, but it's said in love and in joking, but
It's true.
It sticks.
Yeah,
It is true.
I was just going to say, I guess what I really appreciate you, Dr. Kelly, because I think we'd all agree, and we were discussing this as well, that it's important to be your own doctor, quote unquote, right? Because lifestyle affects every aspect of how your body is going to react and respond and function. And so that was one great part of the discussions that I have with you. When I take the time to actually sit down and think of, I've tried this thing, but this isn't working. You actually sit down and you give me the time to say, oh, okay, you're not feeling good with that. It's your body, because it's important, right? Even though you're a doctor, you're a chiropractor, and you're able to give me the advice, everyone has to sit down and take an opportunity to sit down and say, hey, how do you feel and how are you responding to these certain these different treatments? And so I think that's an important note, just to put that out there for everyone, for them all to know, for the audience to know, for people to know. That's important for you to just take the time to actually see how your body is responding.
For sure. Well, and part of that is why I don't have any pre-made protocols. It's each person is a unique individual, and how they arrived at a particular illness or symptom or whatever is 100% specific to them. That's why if somebody's diagnosed with like Lyme's disease, they could do all of this research and implement all of these amazing things that we now see benefit from, but they may not get the same outcomes or results because it's still not addressing what is going wrong in their system that allowed this to manifest in the first place. And even that isn't a cookie cutter thing. That's you, Santia. It's like, here, this is what I would do eating wise, but the back and forth of like, my body's not really jiving with this. And then we can go back and look at testing as well. Like, oh yeah, your body isn't getting the response we would. So let's fine tune and tweak this in this manner. Like, I always go back to the testing because it gives that empowerment that you talked about in the very beginning. I have some patients who want to try some different medical procedures or different solution that medical is offering. So for example, the GLP-1, which is the semaglutide, they're diabetic medications that people are using for weight loss. I am not a fan of those because I see the negative of what they do. There's not enough people talking yet about the negatives that can happen when somebody is looking for a quick fix. Now, my job is to test and give recommendations. I have a person right now who's like, well, now a naturopath is talking about doing micro dosing of these GLP-1s. And I'm like, here's my concern with that. But if you decide you want to do this, we need to get some other benchmarks of different markers. So like cancer markers, we want to look at pancreatic enzymes because it can stress that. And I've already looked at kidney function, liver function. So we get a baseline for where you are. And then if you're going to implement this other, solution, we at least have something to measure against to see how is your body responding to whatever you put into place. So that's, again, where the testing piece is so empowering, because depending on how well connected you are with your body and how you feel, some people are not. So how we feel isn't always the best means for judging, like, how healthy are we? Obviously, you can pick up when something doesn't feel right, but symptoms also won't show up at times until longer down the road. They show up last. So when you can go back and fall on objective markers of what's happening at a cellular level, which is going to change sooner than sometimes how we feel, it's nice to just have that tool to go, oh, yeah, my body's totally jiving and this is great. Or no, my body's not going in the direction we'd like. Or, oh, this, solution that I decided to implement is actually working against me. I should probably stop, even though I don't feel any issues with it. So testing is just, I can't say enough good things about that. I'm totally biased, but it's just that objective view. It's like pulling the hood up on a vehicle and like really investigating. It allows us to really see where things are at. But going back to full circle, everybody is unique. So what will work for one person, even a twin, is not necessarily going to be what works for you.
Very true.
Yeah.
Okay, so for someone who doesn't know where to start, what tests would be the first test that you would recommend that they get?
When somebody comes to me, my minimum starting place, as I was mentioning, is being able to evaluate all of the organ systems. So if you're in the US and you try to do it through the medical doctor, their hands are tied because they can only test what they can justify to insurance, which means you have to have symptoms in order for them to be able to justify it to insurance. And we don't want to do that. If we're investigating, that means things haven't happened yet. So being able, like classic blood panels for the immune system, looking at a complete blood count. But we would also want to combine that with what they call a comprehensive metabolic panel. This is going to get you some of the organ function. There's a little bit in there for the digestive system and the liver. Trying to think what else is actually in there because everything I do is so expanded. There's, some electrolytes are in that panel as well. Throwing in a hemoglobin A1C to get a better understanding, not just glucose, for how is your body regulating blood sugar is a more preferred way to do that. It shows us kind of historically what you've done in the last 2 to 3 months versus just 24 to 48 hours. So that's important. So a CBC, a comprehensive metabolic panel, you can generally get done with your MD without issues, but we're missing a lot of information. Throwing in a hemoglobin A1C is helpful. Throwing in a lipid panel, because that's not part of the comprehensive metabolic panel. The lipid panel are your cholesterols. That's useful to get a little bit of insight. However, the medical world uses that as the gold standard for evaluating your risk for cardiovascular related events. Your body needs cholesterol in order to survive. In fact, if it gets too low, there's more detriment, more doom and gloom types of things going on in your body versus it being too high. So it's nice to have that information. I will see cholesterol levels increase as a way the body's protecting itself. So I like to be able to have that information, but then I got to look at the rest of those markers to understand, well, why is the body protecting itself? That's something your medical doctor should be able to do right off the get-go as well. But then there's a whole bunch of other markers that you kind of have to fight for, and depending on the doctor and how well they can push things with the insurance, you may or may not get them done. I mean, vitamin D, that should be in there too. More doctors are running that now. But then, like, there's extra liver enzymes that they don't look at. The inflammatory markers they don't look at. There's alkaline phosphatase, which we run regularly, can give insight on liver disease and bone issues, or it can also give insight if there's an underlying cancer type of pathology happening in the background. So, and the weird thing, medical doctors don't do a urinalysis hardly at all anymore. And in America, about 40% of Americans have positive findings in urinalysis. Urinalysis will give a little bit of insight on kidney function. You can see some dietary influence, like if somebody's eating a diet that's really acidic, the urine will be acidic versus somebody who is eating more alkaline or more, not always just vegetarian, but my vegetarians always have very alkaline urine. You can see if somebody is really keeping carbs at a low, because you'll see ketones come through the urine. But you can also, if they're not, something that will show up often in urine before you may even see the results in blood is sugar spilling over or ketones because somebody's actually diabetic. So you can look at that. Kidney function, like I said, bladder function, insight for infection. So pairing all of those together would be really important. Now, for me, you don't, like, medical will test for toxins sometimes, and they only look at it in the blood. But these toxins are so toxic that the body moves them out of the blood really fast, and it will put them into different tissues to protect you from them if it's not being able to get rid of them. So when I look for toxins, that's where we test through the hair, and then we test through urine as well to be able to get that information. So trying to piece it all together, if you're doing it on your own, it's difficult, very difficult. And to get more, broad, like body as a whole, you'd have to find a doc like myself who's outside of the system that doesn't have their hands tied by what insurance says you can do or not do. That answer that question, okay?
Yes. It's a complete package. And there's certain individuals who are able to do it, you being one of them. And you, of course, can share your details at the end of
and we'll put it in
and we'll put it in the body as well.
Yeah, in the description as well.
Perfect.
Yes, but I did find that was like, I initially did that test, and that did show us so many different things we definitely weren't and knew about, anticipated, or
I kind of anticipated just for my little, I don't know what you call it, Sherlock, like researching and just putting different things together when she took collation. Because, as you know, she had a lot of, we found a lot, when you did the testing with you, Dr. Kelly, we found that she had a lot of heavy metals in her body. And I remember that the medicine that she was on when she started to have a relapse, before that, she should have had a relapse earlier, according to how long the medicine was supposed to last. But what had happened was we did collation with a health coach that we had visited, and I realized that from that time I put that together with the fact that extended it about four months or so, and I was like, out of all the things I was looking at, like leaky gut, toxins, mold, all those different stuff, I circled toxins because collation, as you know, takes toxins out of the body. So I figured that might have been a problem. And so I was trying
some of a leeway.
Yeah, that may have been one of the major issues causing the problems that she was having.
The heavy metals.
The heavy metals, yeah. And like you said, because I thought that could be a possibility, I was fighting so hard just to get that test. And it's not as available here in the Bahamas, but even in the States, I was like, can I please? Like, oh, no, we don't do that test. Even in healthy people, that test will show something. And even here, like when I spoke to one of the doctors, she was like, oh, that test doesn't mean anything. And so I thought that, I must have, eventually I thought I must have gotten it wrong until I spoke to you when we spoke to you in January. He was like, oh, well, if you can see it in the blood, it's definitely deeper because it has to, the blood is just like, if it got to the blood, that means it's a lot more that you're not seeing if you don't do like specific heavy metal, like no, not the detoxing, the test she did with the hair.
Yeah.
And when we did that test with you,
Yeah,
Well, and
found more.
if it's in the blood, more than likely it's a very acute exposure. So for it to be in the blood, they say, and this will vary depending on the toxin, but you've been exposed significantly within the last 72 hours if it's still in the blood. But say, for example, like arsenic, if arsenic shows up in the blood, that's happened within the hour, normally speaking. Because arsenic is so toxic, the body will pull it out of the blood almost immediately to try to protect you from it. So it's either going to be excreted out through the urine. Hair is slower to show things, but it is another avenue that the body will use to remove different toxins, different heavy metals. But if the body doesn't have the nutrients needed to excrete it, then it gets put into fat cells, or it can get put into different organ systems, depending again on the toxins. So oftentimes I will do testing and I don't really see a whole lot of toxins in the hair. And then the first time somebody does a urine collection at home, there's 2 days we do it. The day one, we're getting a baseline of what's coming out through that highway system. And I won't often see a whole lot coming out through that highway system. And then day two, as you guys know, I give you a nutrient that is a chelator and we do a challenge dose. So it's a bigger dose than what anybody would use for therapy. And then we collect urine afterwards to see what actually came out. And that is the test where I almost always find lead and mercury that I don't see evidence for otherwise. And what that ultimately means is the body is purely accumulating it. It's not being able to offload it at all. So it's building up inside of the tissues, which leads to everything under the sun. So toxins in today's world are a significant contributor to any issue that there is. So you are amazing with your research that you have done, and to be able to connect those dots ahead of what everybody else was saying. I would say that that was why there wasn't a relapse sooner as well. You were already starting to work on the underlying, at least part of why did this happen.
Yeah, just part.
Place. Yeah.
And I would say that was only the grace of God, because I still was just like scrambling, it was just, everything was so new. It was like this whole complete world. And even Santia, like, I realized like the last few years, she says this a lot. Well, you could say about your mind, and after the clarity that you have now Because I would always be like watching podcasts and stuff, and I would be hiding, like, so she couldn't see me because I know she couldn't stand like hearing all of the
Because she would be
information
constantly doing
processing.
an insatiable amount of research, just constantly looking for new
Yeah.
things. But as time went on, I was able to take in so much more of that information. Like my mind became a lot more clear. The
Yeah.
information that was coming in, it didn't seem like, it wasn't like fuzzy
Or overwhelming.
or overwhelming. I was able to
Yeah.
take it in, utilize it, and move forward with it. But in the past, I wasn't able to do it. It just sounded like cacophony. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah.
And so now I'm able to take all of that information a little bit more, and she still does a lot more. That's just her.
Yeah, that's
But instead of running away, I'll stay in there, listen to what she's saying, or do my own personal research.
Yeah.
And I'm able to take it and use that information to actually help others as well as myself.
Yeah, I definitely noticed like her processing speed and everything. It's just, it's improved. I guess what you had was brain fog without realizing it.
I guess so.
And something interesting about that, just sticking with the toxins, the body's favorite place to put them, if it can't remove them, is in fat cells.
The
brain
is like
70%
Yeah,
to 80%, depending on what site you source. So there's a high affinity in the brain for storing toxins. So as we start to help the body do a better job at removing these things again, mental clarity and focus and concentration and mood stability and sleeping better, like everything your nervous system is in charge of can improve. So it's super awesome that that's actually happened. And it's fun, me going back to the very first time we chatted compared to today. I can tell a difference in you too. It's pretty fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's crazy. That's crazy. What? Because it was like, what year was that? That was the beginning of 2023, right? It was just last year. So it's been a year. Yeah, a little bit over
Over a year. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely takes time.
I was just going to say that. You
Yeah.
read my mind. Healing is a journey. Like, people are so used to having quick fixes because all it is symptom managing. And you can make a symptom disappear fast if all you do is paint over the stain in the ceiling. But to go through and actually figure out why the stain in the ceiling happened and then repair that, it is a more time involved process because not all of the tissues in the body heal overnight. Nervous tissue takes long time. It's the slowest healing, tissue in the body. So I'm always proud of my patients, you included, when you stick with it, because you don't always feel amazing right away. Sometimes people even feel worse before they feel better, but it's the body going through this healing journey and process, and different things will heal in different timings. But the amazing thing is, like I said in the beginning, God designed this body to be able to heal itself, and we already have everything we need in order to do that. He's already supplied us with all of it, but it all heals in different timing, in different stages as well too. But once it's healed, we can just keep it that way. Versus if we're just symptom managing, you have to stay on whatever it is that was managing the symptom, because if you take it away, I have people who are like, well, yeah, I don't have blood pressure issues because they're on a blood pressure medication. But if they stop the blood pressure medication, their blood pressure would increase again because they didn't actually fix, the medication didn't fix why it was high in the first place. Versus when you go back and you peel the layers,
Thanks so much, Dr. Kelly. I really appreciate you taking us on.
Oh, of course. You guys are the dynamic duo.
And it's been a
so much
journey.
fun.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. You believe sleep is a major key to reversing disease, correct?
Yeah, sleep is super important.
So what's one thing people should stop doing at night that's ruining their health?
Oh gosh, there's so many things we should not do.
I guess we could put this together because we're coming to the conclusion that disease isn't something that just happens, right? It's a bunch of, I guess, habits as well as environment and different things that we do. So I guess sleep can be one of those that you could tell us what we can do to improve, as well as some other things. Because I found it so interesting. We found you through a webinar with a lady that we followed on YouTube, and she had cancer. And she came to you, and she's cancer-free. And she said something so interesting, which I told you, I think, that she doesn't worry about her health anymore, because if something comes up, she knows that she can just address it. And I thought that was so powerful. I was like, how many people can say that? How many people can live with that freedom and peace of mind when it comes to their health. There's very few. I've never heard anybody say that. And so
amazing.
we're coming to the conclusion, right, that disease doesn't just happen. So like what Satya said about sleep and any other suggestions you may have.
Sure. So sleep, something to stop doing at night. It might be something that people already know, but it is one of the detriments of living in a high-tech like world that we are now. These devices are awful. Like the blue light, your brain treats it like it's caffeine, it's a stimulant. So the research has showed you need to unplug from devices, they say at least 2 hours before you try to go to bed so that your brain has time to calm back down. I always tell my patients, at least like shoot for a half hour. That last half hour before you go to bed, you could consider it your sleep hygiene or your bedtime routine. We're such creatures of routine and habit. Like we do this with our kids. They have a bedtime routine because if they do the same thing and it's at the same time every night, it registers with the brain like, oh, sleep is coming. It's time for me to start winding down. But as adults, we get away from that. So trying to go to bed at the same time every night is one thing that can be very beneficial, and to not waver from that. Waking up at the same time in the morning is also important, whether it's a day off or not. That is something that can set somebody up for success. And then, like I said, that last half hour, make that be sacred and have it be activities that help wind you down, reading in your Bible, spending time in prayer, maybe a little bit of a soak in a tub, although you don't want to do that too close to bedtime, because if you get your core temperature too hot, our bodies like to be at cooler temperatures, But if you do kind of the same thing, you're away from technology and it's soothing and peaceful, that can already set you up for success. Your room, what that looks like, not having technology in the bedroom, making sure it's pitch black. Temperatures, what is it? Celsius, I can't convert in my brain, even though I married a Canadian who talks Celsius to me every single day.
We're good on Fahrenheit.
I like 65 to 72, which 72 to me is too hot. 65 to 70 is about the sweet spot for the environment, the temperature. So putting all of those things and stacking them in your favor is going to be really beneficial as well. You're very right. It's habits, it's our environment that is what allows our body over time to get in this dis-ease type of state. The body is not at ease. So if we start looking at our day-to-day life of what decisions can I make today, or a simple question you can ask is this building my health up or is it breaking it down? And so as you go through every activity, whether it's what you're choosing to eat that day or watching on TV, or if you're going to be active in exercise or not, like, is this building my health up or is it potentially working against me? Because it's not doing nothing. It's either building you up or it's breaking you down. And just getting kind of into that mentality, awareness can be hugely helpful. And then before you know it, you've got all these different nuances and activities of life that are building you up regularly. And again, people sometimes strive for perfection and you can't. It's impossible. So trying to be perfect with anything is setting yourself up for failure. So just trying to get more of the good into our everyday lives, the more you do that, like good habits feed more good habits is what I've always found. So whatever we're doing that's destructive becomes less appealing and attractive, and we realize how it makes us actually feel, and it's not great. So it's if we focus on the good, the bad oftentimes will minimize too.
What about red light?
Red light's great.
Because they have them on the iPhones. I know you can, put that
we do like
setting
this.
on.
It's not, the iPhone has like dark mode, but it's not exactly red. It's like this amber hue. But we saw this video where this guy was able to make your screen completely red. It's really hard to do anything and see anything, but it's very red. It's not like the little amber from night mode or whatever that is.
Yeah, the red light is better for sure. It doesn't have the same stimulatory type of an effect that the blue light does. So if you need to be on your phone, to switch it more to dark mode is going to be helpful. But the best thing to do is just get
Get
off
rid of it.
it. Stay away. Shoot for a half hour if as best as you can. Shoot for the half hour and work from there.
Work your way
and
up to 2 hours.
yeah,
This
that would be
question
a
might
huge plus.
this question might be a little off. I'm not, because I haven't spoken to you about this, but I recently found out the other day when it deals with the, I'm going to say the jab, I suppose, which we think played a major role in Santia's past health issues, continued health issue. And they said that they just recent released, I don't know how recent it was, the ingredients that people didn't know because they weren't saying all of the ingredients in the vaccine. And they were talking about the spike protein. And I literally, like 2 days ago, Saturday night, I was just researching about it because one of the headlines stood out to me. It said, long COVID doesn't exist. Those are residual effects of the jab. And there was this really sweet lady we were talking to, well, mainly Santia was talking to, but she has long COVID. And, well, what the doctors say is long COVID. And so she deals with a lot of issues. By the grace of God, she's here because a lot of people didn't make it. And so she's grateful. She has like breathing issues, etc. And so that stuck out to me. So I started reading about spike protein and can this cause autoimmunity? Of course, it does. It does cause autoimmunity. So I'm thinking, obviously, that was the core of. And they said that I heard this other guy. Sorry, I'm rambling, talking about how this spike protein literally affects the brain, the heart, and I can't remember what else they said, but obviously during that time, we'll say 2020 to 2022, there's a lot of people having seizures, which was Santia's issue that we had, especially even on this island, it's so small. The entire Bahamas' population is 400,000 people. You were hearing people having seizures you had never heard of. It's just not it was so infrequent, right? It was just not a thing. Like no one spoke about it, And then so many people I saw online dropping down from heart attacks, etc.
Couple of things. I will tell you, I have never seen in my clinic, which I've been doing what I'm doing for nearly 2 decades at this point. I have never seen in my clinic anything like what I had after 21 happened. 2020, nothing changed at all. It was only after they rolled out the jabs that we started seeing changes. And in this office building that I'm in, there is they do estate planning upstairs. And probates, when somebody dies, and there's no plan in place for what happens to their estate, it's probate. They only had 3% of their business as probate before December of 21. But by December of 21, that increased to over 30%. From my understanding, I haven't probably seen her in probably about 4 months. They brought on a whole other probate attorney. Probate is almost 50% of their business anymore now. And it's always the same story of like, this person was fine. They didn't have any issues and now they're gone. Now they're not privy to the specific medical information of if they had gotten a jab or not, but it's heart attacks, it's strokes, it's blood clots. Those are the most common things that they're seeing. And they never had that even in 2020, not a thing. So I think at this point in time, if people are not realizing that created a major shift in people's health, I don't know where they've been because there's so much evidence now. I've seen way more cancer, way more autoimmune, way more heart attack and stroke compared to what we ever saw before as well. And now, like, we've got cancers that are showing up in younger populations that are more advanced in their staging. And it's like they showed up overnight. So the turbo cancer, became a terminology that we never had before.
I read that. I saw that term. I didn't know what it was. Turbo cancer.
It's basically like it's basically cancers that are manifesting almost overnight, and they're more into stage 3 and stage 4 presentations, which is not normal of cancer either. So that is a real thing. There's several different protocols, again, that are out there for addressing how do you detox this stuff back out of the system. I personally don't like falling into the protocol style. It's a good starting place for somebody if they don't have an ability to test them. Like, definitely do that versus not if that's something that you put into your body. However, to me, the best scenario is doing the testing and seeing what the body actually needs, get the immune system back on board, support the detox pathways if we see that they're not working the way that they should, and then allow the body to work, accordingly. Some of the ingredient, there was questioning about graphene and if that was something that was in there. And from what I've seen, we don't have a specific test to be able to determine if that's something that's there.
The protein?
Graphene. No, this is like a magnetic capability type of a metal type material, and we don't have a test for it. So if we can't test it, it's hard to say, but logic would say if we just get the detox pathways going the right way, no matter what it is, if it's foreign, it doesn't belong, the immune system, the detox pathways should be able to handle it. So that would be more my approach of that. The nattokinase is great. NAC is another one that's really good. Just supporting the immune system as a whole is really important. This is where the pine needle, there's pine needle extracts out there that bind spike proteins. Dandelion binds spike proteins. Doing some of the detox baths they've talked about as well. So all of these things can be utilized, but I would be more apt to have somebody, do any of these things that are in alignment with you, but let's also make sure we're supporting the body the way that we know it needs to based off of the testing so that you can get as much benefit out of that as possible.
So would you say that detoxing is the single most important thing that we can do if we start today to help our health?
It's a good question. So it is incredibly important, and it's probably the most common thing that I see going wrong in the body is that toxins have accumulated in everybody. But there's a method to the madness. And so the chelator that I like to use is not one that's allowed for sale in the US. Now, hopefully with change of administration and change of perspective, hopefully that'll be undone because it works really well. But I would never have somebody use that chelator the way that I have them use it if I didn't have the rest of the information. If somebody has liver issues or they have kidney problems, or there's an underlying cancer or there's something else that is kind of critical in their system, doing a detox type of a protocol could be too much on the body. And there's all kinds of different detoxes and cleanses that are out there. But if we don't know what the status is beneath the surface, I have had people that I know that put themselves in the hospital. They didn't think there were any issues. They felt fine, but they did a cleanse and then they landed in the hospital because there was actually something going on beneath the surface. So I would kind of tread lightly into that area. Just one of the best things you could do to start right now until you can get information of what specifically does the body need is try to decrease where you're being exposed to toxins. So I think you guys can use this there as well. There's an app. It's free. It's called Bobby Approved. I have no ties to them at all.
And the Yucca lab too.
Yeah, there's another app called Yucca as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So use these apps and turn on the barcode function. That's where you want to go and scan everything that has barcode on it. And if it's showing that it's toxic or on Bobby Approved, it'll give you a thumbs down or a thumbs up. Try to remove things that have thumbs down or they're showing that they're toxic and replace them with non-toxic solutions. Here in America, we've only had 30 substances that were banned by our FDA, and that list had not been updated since the 60s or 70s. So everything that you could put on your skin or into your body or that you use for your laundry and house cleaning and all that, they're all loaded with poisons that slowly expose us and accumulate over our lives. So to me, I have everybody work on cleaning up their environment. And again, you don't have to get 100% right. But if we find out that, your skincare, which you use a couple of times a day, is totally toxic, then let's shift that to skincare that doesn't have toxic ingredients in it so that the largest organ of your body isn't continually absorbing toxins that are now accumulating in the system. And that in and of itself, over time, will take away the exposures, which will also, it can actually help the body do a better job at removing things again, because the body's not being so just beaten down by them or overexposed. That's a super safe thing that everybody should do immediately. And if you go through your house and you're like, oh my gosh, everything's totally toxic, don't freak out. You don't have to just purge everything all at once, because that's overwhelming and it's expensive. But if, like, say you look at your laundry detergent and it's like, wow, this stuff is awful, then, and it's full, just use it and know that the next time you're going to replace it, you're going to find something that's less toxic or not toxic. And now you've created that shift. You can go slowly but surely throughout the house. That way it's not expensive, it's not overwhelming. And by the end of 6 months to a year, everything could be totally different. And you've now really decreased the load on your body, which also is going to help create an environment for healing. Using simple things like the dandelion or pine needle, or even taking some basic nutrition, like some of the key nutrients, actually I put them in a foundation pack that most everybody needs to take based off of what I've seen in testing to support the foundation, which is also including the detox pathways, a good multivitamin, good omega fatty acids, the omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D, depending. And the darker our skin is, the more natural sunblock we have. So the more important it is, even if you're in the sun all the time, to be supplementing, because your body's blocking the sun rays, for that ability to produce its own vitamin D. So that's important. Vitamin C and vitamin E. Those are kind of like the secret weapon of everything. And you get those going into the system, you're not going to create any harm that way, and you're going to already be naturally starting to support some of these detox pathways so your body can do a better job and work more efficiently again.
It's so funny that you say that, because I think prior to having our connection with you, and Anita was doing her own research, we were looking at all of the different things that we shouldn't be using. And it was just like, everything must go. Everything must go.
Yeah.
And it was beyond overwhelming.
Yeah, it was.
And so it's so good that you say,
and
hey.
beyond expensive.
So it's so good that you say, if you have that laundry detergent and it's full, next time get another one. We weren't doing that.
No, we well, at least me, I was, I guess I was just more in I guess I was in like flight or flight. It was a lot. And we didn't know what was happening. Like, it was the second time she was in the hospital and nobody could give us answers. And then I found this book. It was like Cure All or Treat All Chronic Autoimmune Conditions. And so she had this long list of stuff to do. And like, we changed her diet. The food, I feel like, was the most expensive, because that was like a weekly expense, as opposed to, and we're in Highland. And so we're importing 90% of our stuff. So the already expensive stuff gets a little bit more expensive before it gets to us. So, I wouldn't advise it.
It needs to be a transition.
Yeah. A transition sounds much more healthy.
Yeah.
And sane.
Yes. But you guys were in the thick of a scenario too, which my patients that I'm working with that have active cancer diagnosis, for them, I'm like, these are more critical to try to get done sooner than later, because we want to get rid of as much of the offenders as possible to take the burden off of the body. So how you navigated that, even though it was overwhelming, stressful, and expensive, would have been what I would have probably had to do anyway. But the beauty is, right now, if people are not dealing with a crisis scenario, like, now is the best time to work on this stuff.
Exactly.
Don't wait for a crisis to show up and then try to do it all.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
Yeah.
I guess our intensity matched the intensity of the situation.
No question about it.
Yeah, and I started to see switching to like a keto diet, and because she was having problems communicating and getting lion's mane and stuff, like, I saw the differences. So I wasn't going to stop. By the grace of God, we had the finances at the time to get it, to get everything that we needed and to switch our lifestyle in such a drastic way, because it was very expensive. I definitely remember that. But But God is gracious and God is good. And we're still
But
in the
God.
thick, still, I wouldn't say in the thick of it, but still working.
On a journey, yeah.
Yeah, still on a journey, working to be completely, like what is antibody access free, large,
And
to have your,
enzymes and liver and all that good stuff.
yeah, exactly. Still in the process, despite what people have told us is impossible. We're headed there by the grace of God.
Amen. Well, and he's the ultimate physician, and he made bodies that are capable more capable than what we even realize. So I have people come to me, can you help with this? Or this is what we've been given. Like my guy who's potentially going to end up with a liver transplant. And I'm like, nothing's impossible for God. Who am I to say that, well, yeah, you're totally destined for a liver transplant? I ultimately don't know. Let's get testing done. Let's put a plan in place and let's see what happens. And the bodies are amazing. And God still performs miracles just like he did back in the day,
Do you believe faith and mindset actually have the power to change the body at a cellular level?
100%. Like 100%. I have a gal who reached out to me. Her ex just was given a lung cancer diagnosis, and he's basically written himself off. Like he's given up, and she is asking, other options, different set of eyes, want to be able to help. Like, if he has already decided he's done, even if I could say this is going to fix and could guarantee this would cure your issue, it's not going to have the same benefit because his heart and his soul are not in the right place. And on the other side, there's research that was done with cancer patients that they were given what they were told was the cure, and it was a placebo. And they fully bought into this, and they actually healed from it. And then those who found out it was a placebo ended up with their cancer totally back and going down a really bad path. So our mindset is huge for how we handle things, but I think more importantly than that, it is our faith. And does God always heal everybody on this side of heaven? No. But he uses every circumstance for good, just like Romans 8:28, right? I forget how it all goes, but God uses every situation for good. Yep, all things work together for good. If you don't have that, it's such a more difficult battle to fight and to try to win. So having the mind in the right place and having your faith be tied into that, that's really, if you want to talk foundation, that's foundation for everything.
So if you could speak directly to someone who's been told they'll never heal, what would you say to them?
Nothing in life is guaranteed. And how can somebody else who doesn't have an ability to tell the future actually know that this is guaranteed for that person? They may have a lot of science, they may have a lot of credentialing, but ultimately at the end of the day, based off of what I know, 1, God still performs miracles. 2, he designed a body that is more capable to heal itself than and more capable of things than what we even can fathom. So when somebody comes to me to work, just like my potential liver transplant case, it's like, why not? Why can't we just see where we're at and see what the body's capable of and tap into that? And even if the outcome is that this particular person still needs to have a liver transplant, his quality of life has already improved. And the level of health is going to be so much higher that if he has to go through that type of a procedure, he's going to be able to handle it so much better. Or for the person, like my pancreatic guy, he is given a year to live and they want him to do chemo. And he's like, I'm not doing chemo. The quality of life, if somebody implements that, there's no guarantee that okay, maybe we give you 1 more year, but what is the quality of that year?
Right.
So no human being has the ability to predict what the future looks like. Only God knows when your time here is actually done. And I think if the heart and the mind can be in the right place to do everything possible to live as healthy as possible or to give your body the most ability to heal as possible would be I would never give up on that.
So, last question, Dr. Kelly. If you had to leave people with one simple truth about healing, what would it be?
Oh, God designed these bodies' ability to heal themselves, and He already gave us everything we need. Don't let anybody ever tell you otherwise.
Oof, I
Amen.
love that. Short, sweet, to the point. I love that.
It's the nail on the head.
It does. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
so
Kelly.
Much.
You're
It's
very
been a
welcome.
great discussion.
It has.
We hope that everyone who watches gets some new knowledge, get started on their health journey. Those who don't have any sicknesses can go ahead and jump into it in any event, but those who do, we provided some knowledge. You provided some knowledge for them to, to really get testing and
get
figure out
started.
what they should be doing at this
We'll
point.
put Dr. Kelly's information in the description below. Thanks again,
Awesome.
Dr. Kelly.
You're very welcome. Thank you guys so much for having me on and just helping me be able to fulfill more of my mission, which is just getting this message out there and trying to help people as best as I can, be able to take back control of their health through natural health ways and just live according to God's will. I am just so appreciative. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.